Mga migs, good day. In this video, we are going to discuss hypothesis testing or the so-called statistical inference. This is a very important topic when we do research. Now we have to remember these terms. Population, it refers to all possible values. Sample, it is a portion taken from the population. Then statistical inference. This is about generalizing from a sample to a population with calculated degree of certainty so that decisions that we will make based on our findings will be reliable, and there is this way of avoiding making type 1 error. Then parameter, it's about the characteristic of the population. For example, the population mean. Then statistic, that is the calculated value from data in the sample, or we have this the sample mean. Then there are two forms of statistical inference. We have hypothesis testing, and we have also this estimation. Now we have here a diagram showing the population and the sample. So in our population, we have this parameter and the sample that is taken from the population. The data here will provide us the statistics. And the statistics from the sample data will be used to make an inference about the parameter of the population. Okay, so that's the process. So it is written here, statistical inference is the act of generalizing from a sample to a population with calculated degree of certainty. So you can see the arrow that from population to data or sample data, then from our sample data, we get statistics, and this statistics will be used to make an inference about the parameter or the characteristic of the population. Then we have this, the difference between population and sample. When you say population, we have here the measurable quality is called a parameter. For the sample, that is statistic. Then the population is a complete set, while the sample is a subset of the population. Uh, in population, the reports are a true representation of opinion, while in a sample, reports have a margin of error and confidence interval. In population, it contains all members of a specified group. In a sample, it is a subset that represents the entire population. Okay? So a population is the entire group that you want to draw conclusions about. A sample is the specific group that you will collect data from. The size of the sample is always less than the total size of the population. Of course, the sample is less than, or we can say that the population is always greater than the sample. The theory of statistical inference consists of methods by which one makes inference or generalization about a population. So that's why we have to use a sample, because we cannot have all the elements of a population. We cannot use them all. So that's why we have to randomly choose from the population the values that we will be using to get a statistic, and from the statistic we will use that one to describe the characteristic or describe the parameter of the population. Now, there are two major areas of statistical inference. We have estimation of parameters, then test of hypothesis. Two distinct forms of estimate. So we have the so-called Powell estimate. It is a single number that we think is close to mu. It is a statistic taken from a sample and is used to estimate a population parameter. However, it is only good as the representativeness of the sample. If other random samples are taken from the population, the point estimates derived from those samples are likely to vary. So that's natural, no? That given the same population and you get different sample groups, the estimates that you will get from the samples uh, will surely vary. The estimates that you will get will not be equal. But there's one thing for that we will know about. That's why we have to discuss the so-called interval. Okay. Then we have two distinct forms of estimate. We have the interval estimate. So the other one is point estimate. Then this one is the interval estimate. So a population mean will fall between two numbers. The two numbers may be used to construct an interval that is intended to enclose the parameter of interest. It is a range of values within which the researcher can declare with some confidence where the population parameter lies. This is what I said about the interval. We will be using this one to have an idea about the parameter of interest that we're investigating. Okay. Now, let's understand what is confidence interval because this is mentioned in the previous slide. What is confidence interval? Now, this is the mean of your estimate plus and minus the variation in that estimate. That is the range of values you expect your estimate to fall between if you redo your test within a certain level of confidence. Confidence in statistics is another way to describe probability. For example, if you construct a confidence interval with a 95% confidence level, you are confident that 95 out of 100 times the estimate will fall between the upper and lower values is specified by the confidence interval. Your desired confidence level is usually 1 minus the alpha value you used in your statistical test. So, confidence level is equal to 1 minus alpha. So, if you use an alpha value of P less than 5% or 0.05 for statistical significance, then your confidence level would be 1 minus 0.05 or that is 0.95 or 95%. So that is your confidence level. We are certain that if you are going to repeat the process, you are 95% confident that the results will fall within the interval. When do you use confidence intervals? You can calculate confidence intervals for many kinds of statistical estimates, including proportions, population means, differences between population means or proportions, estimates of variation among groups. These are all point estimates. So when you say point estimate, that is just a single value. And don't give you any information about the variation around the number. Confidence intervals are useful for communicating the variation around a point estimate. So we will be having an illustration about this of what we mean by point estimate. As what I said earlier, that a point estimate is just a single value. But when you say interval, it is a range of values in which uh, we hope that the estimate that we will do will fall within that interval. Suppose you do a survey of 100 rural residents and 100 urban residents about their television watching habits and find that both groups watch an average of 35 hours of television per week. However, the urban residents surveyed had a wide variation in the number of hours watched, while the rural residents all watch similar amounts. Even though both groups have the same point estimate, that is the average number of hours watched, so that's our point estimate, the urban estimate will have a wider confidence interval than the rural estimate because there is more variation in the data. So that's where our confidence interval comes in. So it's all it's all about the variation in the data. Estimating the population mean with large sample size. So we have the Z distribution. We will have a separate discussion about this one. For this video, uh, let's have just an introduction about this one, but we will have more examples in a separate video. So our Z here is equal to X bar, the sample mean, minus the population mean divided by or all over. This is the population standard deviation divided by the square root of n, where n is the number of observation, the number of values. From the from the formula given, we can derive a confidence interval formula for estimating the population mean with large sample size. So this is the formula we're going to use in estimating the population mean with large sample size. So we have to this equation to be able to create or have that confidence interval. In cases where the population is known to be normally distributed and the population standard deviation is known, the Z value computed from the sample mean is normally distributed regardless of sample size. Thus, when the population is normally distributed and the standard deviation is known, the formula used for confidence interval estimation can still be used even with small samples. So this one, okay, we can use this to determine the confidence interval. However, if the population standard deviation is not known and must be estimated using the sample standard deviation, then the following formula will be used. So this one, from here, the population standard deviation, the small letter of sigma is replaced by a small letter s. But that's the only replacement. That is because the population standard deviation is the unknown. So you have to formula. But if the population standard deviation is given, so you have to use this one. The sample standard deviation is only a good approximation for the population standard deviation for large samples. Note that Z formula that uses the sample standard deviation S is not applicable to small sample analysis. The T distribution will be used instead of the Z distribution. The T formula for means when the standard deviation of the population is unknown, the sample size is small, and the population is normally distributed is given by this formula. So you have to use this one. Take note that for small sample size, so let's say less than 30, less than 30, you have to use T distribution. But if the sample has more than or at least 30 values, you have to use the Z distribution. Thus, the confidence interval to estimate the population mean when the population standard deviation is unknown, the sample size is small, and the population is normally distributed is given as. So this is another case in determining the confidence interval to estimate the population mean. Take note, when the population standard deviation is unknown and the sample size is small, no, the population is normally distributed is given by this one. So this is the formula that you are going to use. So you have here the sample mean minus the quantity T distribution sub alpha over 2. That's the alpha here is your confidence interval or level of significance. Then n minus 1, n is the number of observations. Times this quantity, the sample standard deviation divided by the square root of n, less than or equal to the population mean, less than or equal to x bar plus this quantity. So it looks confusing, but uh, you just follow this one to be able to determine the confidence interval to estimate the population mean when the population standard deviation is unknown and the sample size is small. So again, we have to really know what data we have at hand so we can use the approximate formula to make an interval estimate. So our n minus 1 here is the degrees of freedom. Testing hypothesis about a single mean using large samples. So here, population is n equals 30 or less, provided the sample data are normally distributed and the population standard deviation is known. So you have to use this formula. Okay, let's have a sample problem. In a certain survey, the question, approximately how many years has your company been trading with firms abroad, was answered. A random sample of 144 respondents to the question yielded a mean of 12.485 years. Suppose the population standard deviation for the question is 9.4 years. Construct a 90% confidence interval for the mean number of years that a company has been trading abroad. So, in our solution, we have to use the formula, this one. Z equals X bar minus mu all over sigma or the population standard deviation divided by the square root of n. And then doing some manipulation, we in this equation we multiplied both sides of the equation by this quantity, population standard deviation divided by the square root of n. Then we want to solve for the population mean, and by doing some manipulation of the equation, we have this one, mu equals x bar minus z times the quantity population standard deviation divided by the square root of n. So this is the value of this one, z times this quantity will be used to add and subtract the Powen estimate. So what we have here, mu equals 12.485 plus minus. Why is it plus minus? Because we are going to make an interval. Okay? So this 90% confidence interval, the Z value equivalent to 90% is 1.645. Then our 9.4, this is the population standard deviation, then divided by 100, the square root of 144, because we have 144 in the sample of this problem. Then what we have is 1.645 times 0.783. The product is subtracted and added to 12.485. So the result is our population mean is greater than or equal to 11.20, but less than or equal to 13.77. So this is the 90% confidence interval that we constructed. Now, let's have the interpretation of this. The researcher is 90% confident that if a survey of all companies trading abroad were taken at that time, then the actual population mean number of years would be between this interval, 11.20 and 13.77. So our point estimate of the population mean number of years is 12.485. So it is very clear in the illustration that using a point estimate, and in this particular illustration, as our point estimate, we use the sample mean to determine the population mean. And again, in this illustration, the researcher is 90% confident about the companies trading abroad to have a population mean between 11.20 and 13.77. Okay, we will have more illustrations about confidence interval estimate in a separate video. So this video, as what I said, is just to introduce some very important things related to hypothesis testing. So what does degrees of freedom mean? What is the meaning? The easiest way to understand degrees of freedom conceptually is through an example. So let's have this one. Consider a data sample consisting of, for the sake of simplicity, 5 positive integers. So we have 5 positive integers. The values could be any number with no known relationship between them. This data sample would theoretically have 5 degrees of freedom. Now, 4 of the numbers in the sample are, for example, 3, 8, 5, and 4. And the average of the entire data sample is revealed to be 6. So again, we are considering here 5 positive integers. But we have here 4 of the 5 positive integers. And we are given the the average of the numbers to be 6. This must mean that the fifth number has to be 10. So the fifth number has no freedom. The fifth number must be 10 because the average of the 5 numbers is already set. Is already set. Okay? So it can be nothing else. It does not have the freedom to vary. So the degrees of freedom for this data sample is 4. So you subtract by 1 the given data, and the difference is what we call the degrees of freedom. Meaning to say, out of the 5 numbers, only the 4 numbers can vary. They can have different values, although the average of the 5 numbers is given. But the last one cannot vary anymore because it it is going to take the last number in which the average of the 5 numbers will result. Okay, so degrees of freedom is just equal to n minus 1, where n is the number of observations or data points in a data set. Now, let's have a sample problem. Suppose the following data values are selected randomly from a population of normally distributed values. For example, this one. So, you are asked here to construct a 95% confidence interval selected randomly from a population of normally distributed values. So, we have the idea that we have a population of normally distributed values. So, our answer here is that our population mean is greater than or equal to Z, but less than or equal to Y. And our point estimate for this problem is X. So the researcher is 95% confident that the population mean for the given problem is between Z and Y. So we have not shown here the calculation, but we are just giving you the concept. Now, what is a null hypothesis? A statistical hypothesis in which there is no relationship between two variables or a set of variables is called a null hypothesis. It is represented by H sub O. It states that the population parameters is equal to the assumed or hypothesized value. In simple terms, it claims that there is no effect on the population. A null hypothesis is an initial claim by a researcher using their specialized knowledge or domain expertise. Generally, researchers want to disprove or reject the null hypothesis. Reject. That is because the researcher has to prove that what he hypothesized or what he assumes would be true. So rejecting the null hypothesis will make the assumption in favor of the belief of the researcher. So these are some of the things that we have to know. Parameter, null hypothesis, then alternative hypothesis. Now, in terms of definition, a null hypothesis is a statement in which there is no relation between the two variables. That's why in most cases, the null hypothesis would say there is no blah, blah, blah. Okay? Then the alternative hypothesis, an alternative hypothesis is a statement in which there is some statistical relationship between the two variables. This is what the researcher would like to achieve. And this will only happen if the result, if the researcher can uh, reject, or disprove the null hypothesis. Generally, researchers try to reject or disprove it. Okay, that's what I said. Researchers try to accept or prove it. So the alternative hypothesis is what the researcher would like to prove. Then the testing process, for the null hypothesis, we have indirect or implicit, while the alternative hypothesis, that is direct and explicit. In terms of the p-value, again, we will be discussing also a separate video for this, what is meant by p-value. This is our reference in rejecting or accepting the null hypothesis. Null hypothesis is rejected if the p-value is less than the alpha value. So this alpha value is to be decided. It is the researcher who will decide uh, the alpha value, or this is what we call the significance level. And in the case of uh, social research, we have this 5% margin of error, or a 95% confidence level. Otherwise, it is accepted. An alternative hypothesis is accepted if the p-value is less than the alpha value. So if the alpha value is 5% and the p-value is is less than the alpha value, say 5%, and the p-value is let us say 2%. So we have to reject the null hypothesis, uh, but and have the alternative hypothesis. It says here less than the alpha value, otherwise it is rejected. Then the notation H sub O, the alternative hypothesis is H sub 1, or sometimes H sub A. It doesn't matter. Then the symbols to use for the null hypothesis, we have equal, less than, or greater than. Then for the alternative hypothesis, that is inequality. We will know more about the symbols to use for null hypothesis and alternative hypothesis. Now, elements of testing or hypothesis testing. Hypothesis is basically a statement about the target population. As a statistical hypothesis is an assertion or conjecture concerning one or more populations. So two forms of hypothesis. We have null hypothesis. So we have already introduced this one. Is the hypothesis to be tested, and it represents what the investigation doubts to be true. Then alternative hypothesis is the operational statement of the theory that the experimenter or researcher believes to be true and wishes to prove. Now, here's an illustration. You want to test whether there is a relationship between gender and height. Based on your knowledge of human physiology, you formulate a hypothesis that men are, on average, taller than women. To test this hypothesis, you restate it as so. In your null hypothesis, men are on average not taller than women. This is contrary to your alternative hypothesis. This is contrary to your belief that men are on average taller than women. So we have here, men are on average taller than women. So this is our alternative hypothesis. This is what you believe as a researcher based on what you know about human physiology, that men are on average taller than women. So your your null hypothesis that men are on average not taller than women. Okay, so this is an illustration how to write the alternative hypothesis and the null hypothesis. So this is for you to make a hypothesis. When I say hypothesis, you have to stipulate the alternative and the hypothesis. Now, let's have this directional and non-directional test. We have the so-called one-tailed or directional test. Of course, when researchers do have a priori expectation about the sample value they expect to observe. One-tailed test, this is an alternative hypothesis that contains either greater than or less than or greater than sign. For example, you have a group of learners and you introduce a strategy to improve their performance or understanding of the lessons. By that, we have the expectation. No, we have the expectation that the strategy, the intervention you give to the learners would help them improve. So by that, we could use the one-tailed test in determining if there is a significant improvement in their performance. Then two-tailed or non-directional test of a hypothesis is a test where the alternative hypothesis does not specify a directional difference of the parameter of interest. So let's have the same, no? Let's have the same situation. You have a group of learners and you have given them a strategy. Uh, if you do not expect, no, if you do not expect that the performance, you just would like to give that intervention and you would test if that will improve or not. So with that, you have to use the two-tailed or non-directional test. So two-tailed test, alternative hypothesis contains the not equal sign. So again, as what I said, if the performance of the learners will improve, that if the performance will not improve, that's okay. So you have no expectation in terms of the significant improvement of the performance of the learners. But if you want to see if there is there should be or there is an improvement in the performance, so you have to use the one-tailed test. Okay, let us now discuss the types of errors incurred by researchers. Now we have here a decision table. We have the decision. It could be true, false. Then here, reject null hypothesis, reject null hypothesis. Now let us have the type 1 error here. Type 1 error, type 1 error. If you are going to, this is the intersection of true, then reject null hypothesis. If you are going to reject a null hypothesis, that is true, you commit a type 1 error. So it says here, occurred if a researcher rejects a null hypothesis when in fact it is true. The probability of committing a type 1 error is denoted by the Greek letter alpha. So, rejecting a null hypothesis that is true is a type 1 error. But if you are going to reject a null hypothesis that is actually false, you are doing a correct decision. Then the second one is the type 2 error. Type 2 error is incurred when the researcher accepts the null hypothesis when in fact it is false. The probability of committing a type 2 error is denoted by the Greek letter beta. Look at the decision table. Reject the null hypothesis, and if that is true, you make a correct decision. Rejecting a null hypothesis that is actually false is a type 2 error. So we have to be careful in doing research because we should refrain from doing a type 1 error. Remember, we have to make a decision in the inquiries that we have in our research work. Now, consequences of incurring type 1 error. So alpha value, then the extent of the consequence. If the alpha value is 0.01 or similar, that's very serious. If the alpha value is 0.05, the extent of the consequence is moderately serious. If the alpha value is 0.10, not too serious. Okay? Uh, let us understand this clearly. So the alpha value is our significance level. Significance level. Take note that type 1 error is about rejecting a null hypothesis that is actually true. So with this alpha value, and you have rejected the null hypothesis, which is actually true, the consequence of committing that one is very serious. Okay? Because you have a very high uh, significance level, that is 99%. That is 99% significance level, and yet the null hypothesis is rejected when in fact the null hypothesis is true. Okay, that makes it very serious. Steps in hypothesis testing. First, formulate the null and the alternative hypothesis. Second, set the level of significance. Now, this is what we're talking about, the alpha level. As what I said, for social research or social science, social research, or just like the researches that we do, uh, you have to use 95% significance level, or the alpha value here is 5%. Select the appropriate test statistic. So, appropriate statistical tools. Establish the critical or rejection region. Then compute the value of the test statistic from the sample data. Then state your decision. Of course, the decision will be based on the calculations that we do from the sample data. Now, we have here a sample. In a recent survey of nurses in Region 1, it was found out that the average monthly net income of nurses is 12,500. Suppose a researcher wants to test this figure by taking a random sample of 158 nurses in Region 1 to determine whether the monthly net income has changed. Suppose further that the average net monthly income of the 158 nurses is 21,000 and the population standard deviation was found out to be 4,300. Okay, so let us state first our hypothesis. So our null hypothesis here, the average monthly income of nurses is 12,500. So go back to the given situation. Okay, in a recent survey of nurses in Region 1, it was found out that the average monthly income of nurses is 12,500. So this is our population mean. So this in among the nurses in Region 1. So that's our uh, null hypothesis. Then the alternative hypothesis, the average monthly income of nurses is no longer 12,500. Now, you might get confused that in the null hypothesis, we do not say the average monthly income of the nurses is not equal to 12,500. Now, you have to take the idea. You have to take the idea that the null hypothesis is to contradict the alternative hypothesis. Look at here. Suppose further that the average net monthly income of the 158 nurses is 21,000 and the population standard deviation was found out to be 4,300. Okay? This is a supposition. This is the hypothesis. But what we are after of is that the average monthly income of the nurses in Region 1 is no longer 12,500. Okay, so we have this confidence interval and the Z value. This is what I said. So 90%, that is equivalent to 1.645. 80% is 1.28. 95%, that is 1.96. 98% is 2.33. 99% is 2.575. 99.8% is 3.08. The 99.9, that is 3.27. So you have to use, if you are asked to construct a confidence interval or a point interval, just like the illustrations that we have earlier. So from confidence interval in terms of percent, you can transform them into Z value.